Welcome back. Off the Record starts right now. On the OTR panel this week, we have Zach Gorchow and Chad Livengood, along with Chris Christoph. Here's the rundown. The Bolger-Greimel feud is fixed. The road funding update. And later on, Oakland County Executive L. Brooks Patterson will be here. All this and more coming up right now. Off the Record.
Getting the inside out. It's Off the Record with senior Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic and his Capitol Press Corps colleagues.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by a grant from Truscott-Rossman, Michigan's only bipartisan strategic communications firm, serving statewide, national, and international clients from their offices in Lansing, Detroit, and Grand Rapids. TruscottRossman.com. By the Michigan Food and Beverage Association in conjunction with the Michigan Business and Professional Association, working together for its members. Membership information on the web at mishbusiness.org. And by Hager Fox Heating and Air Conditioning Company, providing solutions and choices for our clients' comfort for over 70 years. Hager Fox and Bryant for whatever it takes. HagerFox.com.
And now this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Thanks, Joe Donovan. Welcome to this week's edition of Off the Record. Well, we had a feud between the Speaker of the House and the Democratic leader. Zach, what was that all about?
Well, the negotiations about the road funding topic are continuing, and the Democrats are very worried that the Republicans will punish Democrats for not putting up votes on it by passing legislation they don't like, perhaps something like repealing the prevailing wage law. So when Tim Greimel, the minority leader in the House, was asked about that, he basically said, we're not going to, be negotiating. We're not going to negotiate with terrorists on this topic. Basically, equating the idea of the Republicans saying, if you don't put up votes, we will do this as a form of terrorism. The Republicans, as one might expect, reacted very angrily to this. Asked for an apology, didn't get one, and then you had Greimel then come back, upset about the criticism from the Republicans, and say, well, hey, those Republicans who were left the House committee hearing earlier this week early, which lasted many hours, on the controversial auto insurance legislation. Stay with me here, Tim. This is a long one.
I'm going to get my no-dos out here.
They should be thrown off the committee,
yep.
Which then Bolger said, well, okay, we won't do that, but any Democrats who missed committee meetings last week, they're off their committees. And it was bedlam.
So then basically he told those Democrats, come talk to me, and maybe we can put you back on your committee. And within like 30 hours, everybody was back on their committee because they went and talked to him. It was all kind of trying to embarrass the minority leader.
Well, the dangerous part here is this little exchange, this nif-gnawing between the two of them was putting in jeopardy any movement on transportation. Is that not a fair analysis?
Yeah, well, it probably puts a lot of things in jeopardy. There's a lot of holdover anger from the right to work legislation in lame duck session last fall. That sort of hovers over everything. I mean, this is like high school. I mean, and you'd wonder why anybody outside the confines of Lansing doesn't look at what's happening in Lansing as just childish petulance and silliness.
But to their credit, they had a peace statement.
I would say very little credit. I mean, it was the only alternative. They had embarrassed the institution with their actions, and I think they were hearing that from a lot of people, and realized they needed to walk this back and put this embarrassing
what did they
episode
say?
behind them.
Well,
Nobody apologized for anything.
They put out this statement that we're going to work together, and I guess we'll have to see how that works out next week.
Well, I'll tell you what, the governor's office was very concerned about this, okay? And the governor said, I'm not going to get in the middle of it because it's not his job, but it was making it more difficult to negotiate transportation. And you're right, Chris.
Transportation has its own, inbred problems too that it's got to get over, other than a feud between the two leaders. I mean, that's a serious problem to get votes for taxes.
I think eventually the D's may get what they want from the governor on the repealing wage. I think that signals have been sent privately that that probably is not going to be a problem. Are you picking up any of that?
If he wants to get anything out of this year, he's going to have to give the Democrats something big, because his Medicaid issue is definitely getting close to life support, and the roads is really a tough struggle to get the votes he needs from Republicans at this point.
All right, now in the next segment coming up, which we recorded before we did this segment with Brooks Patterson, he, I think, made some news, Zach. He called the Speaker of the House Adolf Bolger.
Yes.
And when you heard that, you haven't seen it yet, but stay tuned. You'll want to see it, believe me. What did you think?
Oh, it was, it was pretty shocking. I mean, he compared the Speaker of the House to one of the worst people in the history of the human race.
Because?
I think he's upset about a lot of things, but he'll explain later. He was upset at a member of his staff not being allowed to testify at a committee hearing yesterday on the auto insurance issue. And I think he didn't say it directly, but he almost seemed to be referring to this whole flap this week with, in fact, he did mention the throwing people off the committees. And basically it sounded like, to clean up what he said, that he thinks Jase Bolger is very autocratic and not a good speaker at all.
Well, he's got his own issues with the no-fault, the no-fault insurance reform debate, and getting snubbed by the Republicans.
This is pretty strong language, though.
Oh, absolutely strong. Yes, I was I'm not sure shocked, but I mean I was surprised to hear him say it, and more than once. And he made it very emphatic. He views this speaker as ineffective and dictatorial and someone who shouldn't be there.
Quote, is embarrassing himself.
Yeah, and he he didn't lay out a ton of different examples, but you could tell that just some of the things that have surrounded this speaker for the last year, basically since May 15th last year, when the Roy Schmidt scandal kind of started to unfold. This speaker, I mean, he sort of made mention that the speaker has changed in some way in his short 2.5 years.
Well, denying the testimony from Mr. Patterson to be read into the record, is that what happened at the House Insurance Committee? They couldn't get it into the record?
Well, they submitted it in writing, so
right.
It's technically in the record, but Brooks wanted the member of his staff to be able to go up to the table and talk about it, because the reality is the written testimony doesn't get anywhere near the attention and notice that when you're up there actually talking to the members.
This no-fault insurance, now that came out of committee, is in trouble on the House floor.
Yeah, there are, by most accounts, there's less than 50 Republicans on board with this. Probably maybe more as the details of this come out, because it's being painted as a way to save each driver $125 per car, and implement a new fraud enforcement and auto insurance. But I think as the details about the less care that you're going to get under this plan if you are in a really bad car accident come out, and the $1 million cap, which is what Brooks Patterson is opposed to. People are going to start dropping off, and Democrats are wholly united. They passed a resolution in their caucus yesterday against this, and Leader Grimo is going to be having a press conference today about this.
So yet one more issue where the governor is out front leading the parade, and he's looking over his shoulder, and there's not enough Republicans behind him.
Well, but we've seen this issue how many times in Lansing? It's
becoming sort of a theme.
Well, you know what? Every 5 years or so, the no-fault reform, maybe not even that long, comes up, and it gets beaten down every time. We've had ballot proposals to reform insurance that have been just killed at the ballot, and I don't think sentiment has changed a whole lot. I mean, talking about $125 savings a car. One of the arguments in reform is that it's too expensive to have auto insurance in Michigan, especially places like Detroit where people can't afford it. People spending, $3,000 a car. You say, I'm going to save you $125. Doesn't go very far.
Okay, guys, I got to get out of here. Okay, let's go now to the interview that we did earlier with L. Brooks Patterson. Mr. Patterson, welcome to the program, and Chaz got the first toss-up. Sure.
Brooks, the big subject right now in Lansing that you are involved in is this fight over reforming or changing the no-fault auto insurance program. Yep. And the signature part of that bill is $1 million lifetime cap on medical benefits. Why are you opposed to that?
Well, let me, from the get-go, say that I'm not being covered by that, by no fault. I'm under workers' comp, as is my driver, so I'm not trying to protect our revenue stream here. Went to see Jimmy just last night, and he's a quadriplegic. And since he's under workers' comp, it's something we have access to, and he let me take a look at his records. He's already at $2.4 million, and the accident happened 8 months ago. So if you're a catastrophically injured person, $1 million is illusory. You're going to go through it 4, 5, 6 months. Jimmy's at 2.4, and the accident happened August the 10th. So
well, then how does your governor endorse this?
I know Rick. I think he's got a very smart fellow, but I don't know who's feeding him information. Somebody's really blowing in his ear that you're still going to be 20 times higher than the nearest state. Well, maybe so. I don't know what they do in the other states, but I know the people in this state who have access to that benefit are getting the kind of care they deserve.
Would you have backed this kind of thing, say, 5 years ago?
I actually had a meeting with people involved in this fight about 13 months ago, so it preceded my accident. Yeah. I thought it was wrong then. I think it's more than wrong. Now that I've gotten into it so deep, I think what the Republicans are proposing is cruel. It really is.
Well, then they would argue, and the industry and all the proponents, that the rest of the country is cruel because we are far and away above them as far as life-term benefits. We're the only
For
state
some
that
reason,
does that.
we saw fit to install this no fault and the fund that it created. Right now, that fund is at $15.4 billion. It's self-sustaining. We don't have to charge any driver again. Just off the ROI on the interest alone would pay the bills on an annual basis. So it'd be bring the cost down for that charge on your insurance premium. You can get rid of it, and the fund itself would be sustainable.
So then what's going on here?
Well, the insurance industry, and I'm not trying to pick on industry. I got a lot of insurance companies.
You're about to, though, aren't you?
Yeah, you always know that's the preface. But I mean, it's a cost to them, but they're not hurting. The insurance industry in Michigan is the second most profitable industry in America, only behind Hawaii. So obviously, they're not hurting because they have to, pay this fund. And they only pay up to the first 500.
So this is a little bit of greed.
I understand the capitalist systems. You can make more money. You're certainly entitled to. But I think sometimes there's a human factor that comes into play here. And I used the word cruel a minute ago. If you could see how dependent these quadriplegics are for around-the-clock assistance, just to do the basics that we all take for granted, and to take that away from, there's no other word that fits other than it's cruel.
Well, what would be so bad, as the supporters say, about it, once you hit that $1 million level, then you just go to your regular health insurer?
Oh, what they do, the insurance company said, well, when you hit the million, we'll give it to the taxpayers. It's called Medicaid. And the taxpayers will subsidize your care for the rest of your life. Oh, well, you have to exhaust your personal wealth before you can get onto the Medicaid. So we're going to force a lot of bankruptcies. And then you're going to go into a system in a state, basically a nursing home where Medicaid doesn't provide near the constant care that you get from this no-fault fund. And I think it's an absolute foregone conclusion. Without debate, your level of care will diminish. And basically, the word I think describes what happens. You're warehoused for the rest of your life, which would be, I think, minimum.
Well, there are changes that could occur short of the big cap.
Chris,
for instance, I mean, in workers' comp, and you're under workers' comp in your case, and others maybe too, but workers' comp has certain caps on medical care. Maybe we're getting technical here, but no fault, it doesn't. Could
Chris,
that be changed?
Is the system we have in Michigan perfect? No, because we're the first in America to try it, and we're probably tweaking and refining since 1978. But I think some of the charges that no fault cover are probably out of line, and that's an abuse. So you fix the abuse. If no fault pays $3,000 for an MRI, and your insurance company pays $500, what's wrong with that picture? So you go in and you correct that problem. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, Mr. Lund had a conversation with you last Saturday or Sunday in which he told you were getting bum information.
I've done a lot of research. A lot of other people have done research before me, and I think my research, I'll put it up against Pete Lund's anytime. Again, the insurance company in Michigan formed the MCCA, the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association. All insurance execs sit on the board that govern it. Not one layman, not one person from the outside. And so this is the industry that's driving this so-called reform. Right now, let me make it very clear. One man's reform is another man's bankruptcy. Or worse yet, one man's reform is another man's death sentence.
Well, you don't believe that this plan would reduce the cost of auto insurance in some of the areas of the state, like Detroit, where rates are through the roof? And if not, what can be done?
Look at your premium. The part that deals with health under PIP, the personal protection for the injured, that's about a third of your bill. The rates in Detroit are so high because of the collision, auto theft, and so forth. It's not even close. So the rates are higher in Detroit. and it's, you want to call that a victim of redlining, what have you, but the collision, the theft, is really what drives the price in the cities like that.
Let's shift gears. You support raising the registration fee to fix the roads?
Reasonable, I suppose, but not what they talk about.
20%,
Yeah.
20% increase. Is that okay?
I think it's high. I went to the governor a couple months ago. I said, I got a better plan for you. Put racinos at the tracks, put video poker in the bars. Pennsylvania has it, West Virginia has it. I think Pennsylvania picks up $1.6 billion a year off the revenue, and that's not a tax. That's a user fee. If you want to gamble, you're going to pay the fee.
And he said?
He didn't say yes, didn't say no. I was giving him some input. I think he has. I know he has a sticky wicket right now because he's negotiating with the Indians. You know, you really can't go in competition with him, so you can be careful.
And redo the gas tax? You're on board with that?
I have been before, but that was 2 cents way back. I think I was on the porch with Engler when that one came up. I'm going to stick with racinos and video poker as a easier way to get the money you need to fix the roads.
Well, in other words, you don't want to fix the roads because that's not going to happen.
Oh, I don't know. There's petition drives out there where the public could, in fact, make it happen if it gets on the ballot. I don't think maybe the legislature passed that a couple of years ago. I think it was video poker, if I'm not mistaken, and went to the governor's desk, and he basically, it was a pocket veto. And I think he was sensitive because he had all the Indian casinos he had to negotiate with. But the legislature, to their credit, has passed this very, very concept before.
How, from a policy perspective, how does it make sense to say gamblers pay for the roads when, in general, the idea seems to be let's direct all of the taxes paid on fuel that are, people actually using cars and trucks, have that increase to pay for the roads? I'm
just trying to come up with a painless way. That's all. And it seems to me if you want to have gambling and people want to pay in voluntary assessment, they choose to impose upon themselves. That's better than putting it at the pump across the state. I think we're a donor state when it comes to federal government, when it comes to gas taxes. So we don't get back half of what I think. If we got back just what the other states were getting on the average, like Massachusetts, we know why Massachusetts gets $1.25 every dollar they send. We're at about 91 cents now. Less in public transport, about 61 cents for every dollar we send. So we're a donor state in that sense. If we got back just what other states got, we'd have a pretty hefty kitty to work from.
To make our gas price and tax competitive, should we get rid of the sales tax on gasoline?
That would help. And then I think you run afoul of the schools. If I'm not mistaken, schools get some of that 6% for the school budget, so you're going to have education.
The other proposal out there is to go to the voters and ask for a 1 cent sales tax increase across the board. Would you support that to make the schools whole?
You go to 7%. I guess the point of diminishing returns.
So you're a no vote on that?
I would no vote on that. I think I'm just going to fall back to my safety position, which is if the video poker in the bars, if people want to play, can, and will generate $1 billion.
You certainly have a regional interest, at the least, in what happens in Detroit. Are you comfortable with what's happening there with the emergency manager?
Absolutely. I've had an emergency manager in Pontiac, Lou Schemmel. When he got there, the city was in a nosedive financially. Today, the budget has been balanced for 2 years. Now, the legacy costs still hang out there like the sword of Damocles, but the operational budget from year to year is balanced. Now, Lou's leaving in a couple of weeks.
Well, he eliminated almost 90% of the workforce in that city.
Yes, he did. And that's why the unions are fighting it so much.
He said that should be a model. Now, other people look at that as being an extreme case. Do you think that should be a model for Detroit?
No, they eliminate, not the workforce. They went out and, for instance, the police department in Pontiac no longer exists. They have police services. How'd they do it? They contracted with the sheriff's department, saved themselves $2 million, and put an additional 26 cops on the street. That was a win-win for everybody. So you get the service, you just get it in different ways. You contract for it. Same thing with the fire department. Fire department's gone. Well, how do they protect themselves? Contract with the Waterford Fire Department.
Talk about the direction of your party. Are you concerned where it's headed, if it's headed anywhere?
Well, I tell you, I've been watching what goes on up here in Lansing. I'm beginning to wonder if Jase is in control or not as a speaker. Some of the stupid things which he has pulled Republicans off the committees in retaliation for the Dems doing something similar. That's not what it's just. I go back to your question. The answer is yeah, I am concerned because I see them going and there's no fault. I'm embarrassed that we are leading the fight to really injure the most vulnerable in our society.
But that's happened before. I mean, we've gone through that, the whole no-fault reform thing. I've lost count in the last 20 years or so. That's nothing new, and the Republicans were always at the head of that, too.
Well, the Republicans actually passed it back in the 70s. It was a Republican-initiated legislation, so we want to give them credit for at least initiating it. And I think, frankly, it does have to have some tweaking. Some abuses that exist have to be corrected, like different pricing for the same service. But all in all, I think it's worked well.
Well, what about the Tea Party element in your party?
I tracked that very closely when it started. I think the tirade on the Chicago Exchange, and the reporter was, talking about we ought to have another Tea Party, and like they did back in Boston. And out of that tirade came a movement of mom and pa getting involved. I went to a lot of the rallies early on, and I walked Woodward Avenue, and I walked Big Beaver, and I walked Maple. They had different rallies. The people there were in lawn chairs. They were mom and pop, worried about their health care, but basically. And nice people. And that was the Tea Party. Then I think some people came along and said, look at that, you got 5,000 people. I'm going to jump in front of this group, and I'll become your leader. So basically, some people hijacked a very, I think, strong reaction from Ma and Dad,
So is it a positive influence on your party today?
There are different types of Tea Party, okay?
Mr. Patterson, that was a very clear and direct question, sir.
Is it a positive? No.
Should Congressman Mike Rogers run for the U.S. Senate next year?
He's the only prayer we have. Gary Peters has already cleared the field. He's just going to march right into a primary, save his money, and he'll have 25 million to spend.
Why is it not a positive on the party?
What's that?
The Tea Party.
Because some of the positions they take, I'm talking on the extremists. We could have taken Harry Reid out with a good candidate out there, and we went and run this gal who was a Tea Party extremist, and
What's wrong with extremism?
It's Barry Goldwater. Extremism in the case of what is it? Liberty is a virtue. Yeah.
Well, that was a serious question.
What's wrong
obviously,
with
these Tea Party people believe.
I think, frankly, Tim, the Republican Party, any political party, plays between the 20s. You get into that 5-yard line, 10-yard line on either end, extremely left-wing, extremely conservative. That's not where the game is won and lost. It's really run between the 20s. Extremism is what's on either end.
Well, what would your advice be to the Speaker of the Michigan House, Jase Bolger? You said earlier you weren't sure he was running the House very well. What would you suggest that he do differently?
Adolf Bolger, you mean? He's really become very arrogant, and he's thrown his weight around up there, and I think he's embarrassing himself. I don't think if he thinks he's going to be a candidate for governor, he better learn how to control his temper. He better learn how to work with the consensus within his own party. And I think sometimes Adolf steps a little bit to the fringe, and he's embarrassing himself. He's not, in my mind, going to be a candidate for governor.
Those are strong
I wonder
words.
If it'd be strong. You know what happened yesterday at the hearing? When we had the hearing up in front of the insurance committee, it was Bolger and Lund seeking, quote, some sort of a childish retaliation, and wouldn't let my office testify. I had 11 pages of testimony. I think I filed it. You guys probably have seen it, but they wouldn't let Jerry Poisson testify, and it was sort of like a smirk, like saying, "You sit there all day. Hearing's over. My guy never got called upon," and it was a message. I had debated Lund the week before, and I got a couple calls from people in Lansing thought, "Oh, you're really tough on him." It was a debate, for God's sake. You're going to do your best.
Is that just a personality thing with the leadership, or is there a systematic problem there with who's running Lansing?
Well, I don't think it's systemic to the Republican Party. I just think it's the personality of the individual. We've had some great leaders up there, and we've had some.
I'm going to guess you're going to get a phone call on the Adolf Bolger comment. and when you do, from him or one of his people, you will say,
Mr. Bolger? No, I don't. Look at the look.
Well, isn't that a little over the top?
Yeah, I want it to be. I think what they did yesterday was childish and not letting my office testify. So they're using their authority and their power as speaker, or in Lund's case, chairman of the committee, to screen out anybody who might disagree with him. That's not the kind of tolerance I thought my party represented.
How do you really feel about this? Do you think he's a good speaker?
No. Next question.
Was he a good speaker and turned bad?
I just think that there is some of my friends who've taken to the bench, as judges. Over time, we call it the black robe disease. They start to develop a certain attitude, and they don't put their pants on in the morning the same way we do. Well, I think you sit there in that role as speaker, there's a temptation that you're going to be a little bit bigger and better than the rest of them. And maybe Mr. Bolger is suffering from what you call the black road disease, but in a legislative sense.
Mr. Patterson, are you lucky to be here today?
Oh, yeah. That accident was, left my driver paraplegic, quadriplegic. I'm still in a wheelchair, but only maybe for a couple more months. But at the depth of my recovery in the hospital staff gave me a 3% chance of survival.
A 3%?
3%. And I, of course, was unaware of that. If I had been awake and they told me that, I would have just curled up in the fetal position and died. But I fought back. I was out for 4 or 5 weeks, and I broke bones in both arms, both legs, knees, ankles, left hip, shattered right knee, shattered. I was, it's all my fault. I didn't have my seatbelt on, so I got nobody to blame but myself.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all there. Thank you very much.
I think you may have made some news here. I'm not sure. Mr. Patterson, thanks, sir.
Extremism in the defense of your position, that's okay.
Also, thanks to Chris and Zach and Chad. I'm Tim Skubic for Off the Record. See you next week.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by a grant from Truscott Rossman, Michigan's only bipartisan strategic communications firm, serving statewide, national, and international clients from their offices in Lansing, Detroit, and Grand Rapids. TruscottRossman.com. By the Michigan Food and Beverage Association in conjunction with the Michigan Business and Professional Association, working together for its members. Membership information on the web at mishbusiness.org. And by Hager Fox Heating and Air Conditioning Company, providing solutions and choices for our clients' comfort for over 70 years. Hager Fox and Bryant for whatever it takes. HagerFox.com.
MLive Media Group, providing real-time Michigan news, sports, business, and entertainment at mlive.com. Tim Skubic blogs about Michigan politics daily at mlive.com. Off the Record can be seen online anytime at video.wkar.org. Episodes on DVD are also available for purchase.
Michigan public TV stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.